Now, on the first day of his visit to the United States, Prime Minister Narendra Modi met with 21 CEOs and addressed a gathering of the Indian diaspora in Washington. While interacting with the business leaders, Prime Minister Modi made a free push for Make in India and addressed concerns related to the economic scenario in India post-demonetization, job creation and issues related to safeguarding intellectual property. During his address with the Indian diaspora, Prime Minister Modi emphasized on the need to combat terrorism. He spoke about the surgical strikes carried out last year.
आज विश्व आतंकवाद से परेशान है। यह आतंकवाद मानव जात के ऊपर दुश्मन है। विश्व के कई देश जब भारत आतंकवाद की बात बताता था आज से 20-25 साल पहले, उनके गले नहीं उतरता था। विश्व के लोगों को लगता है ये तो आपका लॉ एंड ऑर्डर प्रॉब्लम है, क्योंकि उन्होंने भुगता नहीं था, अनुभव नहीं किया था। आज विश्व में किसी को टेररिज्म समझाना नहीं पड़ रहा है, टेररिस्टों ने समझा दिया है। हम समझाते थे, समझ नहीं आता था, टेररिस्टों ने समझा दिया है। लेकिन जब हिंदुस्तान सर्जिकल स्ट्राइक करता है, तब दुनिया को ताकत का अनुभव होता है कि भारत संयम रखता है, लेकिन जरूरत पड़े तो भारत अपने सामर्थ्य का परिचय भी देता है।
Right now, to talk more on this, I'm joined in the studio by former Ambassador Surendra Kumar. Thank you so much for joining us here on the broadcast, sir. We're not very far off from Prime Minister Modi and Donald Trump, that first face-to-face interaction. And we'll get into the nitty and gritty of all of that. But first, what were some of the key takeaways for you from Modi's address to the Indian diaspora?
Well, it was vintage Modi. Number of people much less than Madison Square or maybe San Diego, but certainly he is the best brand ambassador of India. He tries to put India in best positive light possible. And he also tries to flatter them, rightly so, for what they have achieved in USA, what they have done their lives and contributing to US. So I think he went around telling about how life-changing things he has done, like giving the cylinder to women, poor, or let's say making corruption-free country. Literally, he claimed that corruption must lie, but it's early. But you must have seen during his entire discussion, the loudest claps came when he talked about surgical strike in Pakistan. You must see in the whole upside. But what he's talking about when he talked about terrorism, nobody listened. But terrorist attacks happen, then you start realizing what it really meant. I think he has invited them. They must take advantage of what is happening in India. He talked 1.3 or 1.25 billion people. Aspirational India needs many things, and they can contribute. And they say the pay up time. You can pay back time. You have really made good in USA. Why not share some of your knowledge? Come and have a look at India. You talked about all those things like railway station, 1500. You can have hotels there. There's sanitation-related sort of areas in which they can work. I think he has invited them that whatever knowledge, experience, and expertise which they have, they can share with India and contribute. And also not contribute just for, not because they came or their forefather came. It's also India is happening place. Right now, economy is booming, whole world looking at India. I think it was a very positive tone, and he's immensely popular. Let us face it, number might be less, but the enthusiasm and the kind of respect for him remains very high.
So he spoke about surgical strikes carried out last year, like you said. I mean, how significant was it to bring that up right before his meeting with Donald Trump?
Well, this is something which in India was very talked about prominently. All news channels were showing it. And certainly it was the biggest ever attempt. But many defense analysts and analysts will say that, look, you have to see very dispassionately what are the after effects. Has it brought down the text significantly or not? There are question marks, because after that so many attacks have happened, things have become really bad. So to send across a message, it's not business as usual. If you attack our side, we can take fight to your side, is legitimate is supported by majority, not almost most of the Indians support it. But to analyze in the long context, whether it really helps you resolve problem is question mark.
Right.
Whether it really stopped terror attack, again a question mark. But certainly it is also to indicate to US administration that Pakistan remains a dangerous place.
Absolutely.
It is hub of epicenter of terrorism,
Yeah.
and they have a lot of influence there. After they have been pumping billions of dollars, they must do something about, use their exercise their influence and try to see them reason it is not the path they should really go on.
Okay, some valid points there. And also, addressing the Indian diaspora, Prime Minister Modi also took a dig at the UPA government, saying there is not a single taint against his government. Prime Minister also showered praise on External Affairs Minister Sushma Swaraj for the efficient functioning of her ministry.
Want me to answer?
भारत में सरकारें बदली गई हैं, उसके मूल में एक प्रमुख कारण रहा है भ्रष्टाचार, बेईमानी। देश के सामान्य मानवी को नफरत है। कि क्या मतलब है? मैं आज सर झुका करके बड़ी नम्रता से ये कहना चाहूंगा कि इस सरकार ने 3 साल में जो भी कार्यकाल किया बिताया है, अब तक इस सरकार पर एक भी दाग नहीं लगा है। सोशल मीडिया आजकल बहुत बड़ी ताकत रखता है। मैं भी सोशल मीडिया से काफी जुड़ा हुआ हूं। आप लोग भी नरेंद्र मोदी ऐप बराबर देखते रहते होंगे, नहीं देखते होंगे तो डाउनलोड कर लीजिए। लेकिन सोशल मीडिया से किसी एक डिपार्टमेंट की ताकत कैसे बढ़ती है, वो अगर उत्तम से उत्तम किसी ने करके दिखाया है तो हमारे विदेश मंत्रालय ने और हमारे विदेश मंत्री सुषमा स्वराज जी ने करके दिखाया है। भारत में हर व्यक्ति नोट करता है, जो विदेश मंत्रालय कोट पैंट टाई तक ही सीमित था, आज वो विदेश मंत्रालय हिंदुस्तान के गरीब से गरीब के साथ जुड़ गया है। ये पहली बार देश में हुआ है। विदेश मंत्रालय रात को 2 बजे भी किसी पीड़ित ने दुनिया के किसी देश में ट्वीट किया हो, 15 मिनट में सुषमा जी का ट्वीट पे जवाब जाता है। 24 घंटे में सरकार एक्शन लेती है और परिणाम लाके रहते हैं। ये है गुड गवर्नेंस, ये है प्रो पीपल गवर्नेंस, ये है एक सेंटिमेंट।
Right, Mr. Kumar, there, Prime Minister Modi, they're taking a dig at the opposition firstly, and then also, congratulating Sushma Swaraj and the MEA for doing such a fine job, in the matters of external affairs. What was your take on that?
Well, let us face it, all Indians will admit the level of corruption has gone down.
Right.
Corruption might have not disappeared. Perhaps it will never disappear totally. It's impossible. But the level, the extent, volume has drastically come down, especially at least the government ministers are not involved. But you look around, there have been chief ministers where the cases are really pending, cases are really being charged. So we are support, but at least central government, where Prime Minister Modi has direct control, none of his minister has been involved. So to that extent, he's right when he's claiming. And also, there is some kind of little fear, scare. You remember once Prime Minister said, "Na main khaunga na khane dunga." Now this kind of message go down, so we welcome that corruption gone down. But to say corruption totally is not, it has not. But we must welcome measures taken. There are no schemes coming out every month or every week. We have really changed from that. But corruption is a long haul fight. We have to fight different levels. Corruption in corporate sector, corruption in the bureaucracy, civil service, political level, and electoral funding. Corruption starts from there. How parties are funding elections. If you have level of expenditure allowed is so small compared to the actual expenditure incurred, where the money is coming from.
Right.
I mean, election commission says, okay, you can spend 10 lakh or 50 lakh. If the expenditure is 10 crore, the difference between the actual amount and the amount allowed is vast. As for Sushma ji, I'm sure she must be very happy.
Yeah.
As being former part of foreign service, I think for the first time, an Indian Prime Minister has so publicly outside India has admired, expressed admiration for the EAM in the foreign service MEA. I think they are doing great job. In Sushma ji, certainly she is not physically there, and also she has been unwell for some time, but she has certainly earned this reputation that if you tweet and you convey some distress, she might help you. Other day there was a function at India Habitat Center, RIS. She is the chief guest. Mr. Hardeep Puri is the chairman.
Yeah.
He publicly, jokingly said, Madam, if some call come from Mars, I'm sure you will send some joint secretary to get Indians out of that. That means she has built up reputation. It's good to make people-friendly image.
Right. We also have now Mr. Nitin Gokhale joining us. He's a security analyst, I believe. Mr. Gokhale, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us here on WION. Mr. Gokhale, Prime Minister Modi emphasized on the need to combat terrorism and spoke about surgical strikes carried out last year as he addressed the Indian diaspora. What do you make of that, and how significant is that? Especially it comes moments before his meeting with President Trump.
Well, you see, after this government has come to power, there have been several changes in the policies as well as approach in combating terrorism. Touch wood, India hasn't seen a major terrorist strike in the past 3 years, which I think the due credit must go to all the security agencies and the kind of coordination that now is evident between different agencies that are tasked to combat terrorism and terrorist strikes. That apart, India's surgical strikes, as you mentioned, the Prime Minister has mentioned, was one of its kind because no Prime Minister earlier had taken the onus on himself or herself to declare something that used to be a covert small operation across the line of control. That used to be left to the company commander or the commanding officer of that unit. And if something went wrong, people did not want to take the responsibility. In this case, there was a planning at the national level, and the onus of ownership was also at the national level. So that is the difference, and therefore it has created a kind of uncertainty in the minds of the adversary across the line of control. That apart, what do we expect from the meeting between the Prime Minister Modi and President Trump? Well, I think India expects the US to share more intelligence, also wants the US to put pressure on Pakistan because the proxy war that Pakistan continues to wage in Jammu and Kashmir is of course emanates from Pakistan occupied Kashmir and directed and controlled by the Inter-Services Agency, the ISI of the Pakistani army. So therefore India will press for US to put pressure on Pakistan. Although India continues to combat the terrorism and the proxy war on its own and has been doing it for such a long time, I think US is an important factor as far as putting pressure on Pakistan is concerned. That's number one. Number two, India would expect and the Americans would expect more sales of defense equipment, and we are hearing now that the unarmed drones, the surveillance drones for the Indian Navy from General Atomics are almost cleared. They need to be notified. The sale of those 22 drones need to be notified to the Congress. I suppose that's the only formality that is left. But that announcement we expect to come. And of course, other manufacturers and the giants of military-industrial complex in the US are hoping that the Indian Armed Forces would buy more and more of their platforms and equipment, including Lockheed Martin's hope to sell the F-16s for the Indian Air Force, which I am not really sure whether the F-16s are the right choice for the Indian Air Force. But that apart, Lockheed Martin has been trying to push that and also has given a kind of allurement to the Indian manufacturers by having a deal with or an agreement with Tata company, the Indian company, and move its the assembly line to India is what they have offered. But that is all in the future. We'll have to see whether that will happen. But there are other important technologies that India wants and the US may be willing to give. There are, of course, other wrinkles in the relationship. For instance, the patent laws, the US is concerned about how India protects them and has weak laws to protect patents. Trade has some wrinkles. But remember, India and the US have huge trade, bilateral trade between themselves, and therefore for both this trip is important. But more than anything else, and my final point here is how the two personalities, very strong personalities, the American president says it's America first, Indian Prime Minister says it's India first. So how they will reconcile this seemingly colliding ideologies or policies is something that many Indo-US watchers, policy watchers will be very keen to watch and observe and look at the outcome. I think that is the key point. How the two leaders hit off with each other will determine the trajectory of Indo-US relationship in the next couple of years at least.
And so, you said that how the America First and the India First, how those two policies work together, there might be some conflict of interest there. Do you see that to be a problem in the near future or in the long-term future?
Well, not in the long-term future. There will be some problems, as we know about the H-1B visas. Also, many of the software, Indian computer software companies which had, I would say, a golden run in the past 20 years or so in the United States might feel the competition and might feel the new policies to be a little restrictive. But they will have to adopt and adapt to the changing scenario or the change scenario and the change policies. There are other skills that Indians can offer. We all know in NASA and in many other technologically driven companies in the Silicon Valley, the Indians really make the mark and perhaps drive those companies there. And therefore, there is much work to be done, but these differences are not irreconcilable. The US wants India to be a net security provider in the Indian Ocean and also wants India to be on its side as a hedge against increasing Chinese assertiveness in Asia Pacific. Okay. Which India will, keeping its own strategic autonomy in mind, will not go the whole hog. That's my view to the US side, but will create a balance. India, as I see it, is a swing power. It will have multilateral ties with various countries. It will have its own way of dealing with China, although at the moment the relationship is frosty. But it will also deal on its own terms with the countries like Japan and Australia and Indonesia in the Asia Pacific, and will not go completely, will not become a stooge of the United States for sure. But certainly there is a lot of convergence on the military front between the United States and India. And it has been happening gradually and has sort of taken shape gradually for the past 20 years or so. I see no reason that to slow down. In fact, defense remains the linchpin of the Indo-US relationship, and that I don't think is going to change, despite the fact that both the administrations, the Indian government and the US administration, are trying to gauge how the other reacts or how the other approaches each other, I mean both of them. And therefore, we'll have to wait and watch how this meeting goes.
Okay, Mr. Gokul, some very interesting points there, but just do stay with us because our correspondent Arshid Seshadri spoke to Indo-US strategic expert Balasaheb Dirde soon after Prime Minister Modi's address to Indian community in Virginia. Let's listen in.
Many Indian Americans that we've spoken to here in Washington, D.C. say the relationship between the Trump administration and the Modi administration is a crucial one, and it is essential to have those talks and dialogues. In fact, there were only 3 Indians who were there when Trump was inaugurated earlier on this year in January. One of them is this man, Bala Saheb Darade. Thank you for joining us. You were also there at the Modi event on Sunday. Talk to us about how important you think it is for the India-U.S. relationship dialogue to continue the way it was during the Obama era.
Thank you very much, Archit, for asking the question. And in fact, it's very important for India and US because we are the largest democracies. And in current geopolitical situations where we see like China, Russia, Pakistan, and whole world, how like Brexit. So it is very important to have these 2 leaders coming together and to go these relations smooth as it were during the Obama administration. And I'm very positive. I'm positive, in fact, because both the leadership are very decisive, and I think they will like each other and good for the country.
Let's talk about some of the specific issues when it comes to India and the United States. H-1B visas and jobs is certainly on the minds of many Indians, and both leaders, Modi as well as Trump, have talked about pushing a very nationalistic agenda. How is that going to play out? Where do we see that in terms of those who rely on those H-1B visas or those students who perhaps come to the U.S. to study? Is there a bit of concern or fear, some trepidation perhaps?
I would say if you see the agenda, both, like you're right, but Trump want to grow economy, U.S. economy, and if you want to grow U.S. economy at 3 to 4%, which Trump aims, he's going to need 250K more IT workers, IT skilled jobs, which currently they're not available in U.S. So naturally, India is going to be the place to look at it, where talent is coming. So I would say, like, apart from a lot of chaos going on, but the real situation is this. I mean, there is a need of talent. But on H-1B, my take is also that now from H-1B to EB-5, EB-1, I would say that India is going to have more quota in EB-5, EB-1. Those are more like better visas vis-a-vis if you see China. Like right now, China occupies more of those kind of visas, and we occupy more of H-1B. But now in that also, I'm seeing, in fact, we getting more space with the current administration. In terms of like trade, because it all comes to the trade. Like today, Prime Minister had a meeting with CEOs. He's again meeting. So he has addressed that issue there also, and it is going to be in a discussion tomorrow. So I would wait till tomorrow, but I see that positive tone. Both the leaders have to address to their nationalistic viewpoint there, and they are right in both the things. But India-US will be the win-win situation if you see the global business and trade scenario.
And the fact that Trump has invited Modi personally, this is an unofficial state visit. The fact that he invited him, he'll be the first international leader to be at the White House. That certainly sends a strong message between the partnership of 2 countries. But in your opinion, how different do you think a Trump America will be for India versus an Obama America? Do you notice a drastic change, a difference? What can we expect in the coming years?
So both the leaders, one thing I want to point out is both the leaders are talking about, I mean, they mentioned as a true friend to each other. That's good sign. But both the things that, like this, like a cut red tape. I mean, cutting the red tape. So both the leaders are talking about that. Modi today talks about good governance, technology, how bringing innovation within the government, and he's talking about how he's reducing the corruption. Today he addressed to the CEOs that 7,000 new policies changed. So like doing ease of doing business, and Trump also talks about the same thing here. So I mean, it's on both sides they're talking on that term. They're talking similar in the similar waves. So I think that mindset is very clear. Directly going out to the people, taking the real issues which matters to the people of both the countries, and I think that is win-win for both India and US, because now I'm expecting decisions will be faster. That is good sign. I mean, that will be, I think, in terms of decision making, this is going to be more positive. And our trade is right now 100 to 150 billion, which now leaders are discussing to take it to 300 billion and 500 billion, and in the second term on the trajectory to $1 trillion. So when trade is going to increase between both countries, I see more business happening, more exchange happening. So that, I think, number one discussion point is going to be trade, where we discussed about trade on a larger scale, and then H-1B and visa issues, they kind of come along. Second is, of course, security and geopolitical aspects.
All right, thank you so much. We appreciate those inputs. We'll have to wait and watch, see how all of this turns out. But there you have it. Certainly strong talks about trade. And also to put things into perspective, on a Sunday, that is when Modi met with the CEOs of many prominent companies here, top 20 companies, including Google, Amazon, Apple, Caterpillar, Walmart, Johnson & Johnson. So certainly that sends a strong message. And as we mentioned, Modi will be the first international leader to have dinner at the White House with Donald Trump. Reporting in Washington, D.C., Archit Seshadri, WION.
Mr. Kumar, both countries have time and time again spoken about a strategic partnership, but the term has never been properly defined. I mean, could you shed some light on that matter, and how do you see the strategic partnership between both these countries panning out?
Yeah, I will comment, but before that, just I am broadly agreeing what Mr. Nitin said.
Okay.
But in case of reference to terrorist attack from Pakistan,
okay,
just after Prime Minister visit or a stop over Lahore, we had Pathankot, we had Uri. In the last 2 months, we have seen even beheading of Indian soldiers. So this kind of terrorist menace from Pakistan has not really come down significantly.
Okay,
Though we are better prepared, our response is faster, and our force commanders have been given authority that they must react in positive, robust manner as a warrant. So that kind of thing. But as I said earlier, Pakistan's support to terrorists who are sent out, last week we found they were really having even the army uniform. So the connection with the army, ISI and the terrorist groups who are working, this kind of nexus, and perhaps with the blessing of the government of the day there. Now you will remember when President Obama came here in Republic Day, he was chief guest 2015. And we signed a joint vision for Asia, Pacific, Indian Ocean. At that time, US was very much determined to remain engaged in Asia. Asia pivot, Asia relevance. And they are seeing that China's emergence, so China's increasing assertiveness can be contained and controlled only when we have a strong country like India, big size, big economy, large population, coming on the American side. Not only that, also broaden this kind of partnership, involve ASEAN countries, involve Japan, involve Australia. All these countries put together can have a sovereign influence on China that you must play by the rules. What we are asking or looking for, not a conflict with China. Even US cannot afford it. You remember US, China, the trade, economic content is so huge, no precedent in US can afford $346 billion trade deficit there. But what they want with it, China should not be assertive in terms of making claims like South China Sea, you have seen it. They have been making claim more than 8-9 countries, neighbors all have problems, but they are not strong enough to challenge China. You can go to court, okay, court can give judgment in your favor, what happened? Philippines got judgment in their favor. And nothing happened. Philippines is now doing, because China, now if US withdraws or seems to be withdrawing from Asia, it's not good for Asian countries. What is happening is now most of the Asian countries, except Vietnam and to some extent Singapore, they're all latching on towards China because they have to have some huge power. So it is our larger interest that US remains engaged in Asia. It is a stabilizing force. Its presence really keeps China under certain kind of limits, the red lines that we don't go beyond that. The artificial islands and claims and threatening, that taking action, detriment. So I think India and US have quite synergy and also convergence of interest so far as this is concerned. Now, if you take the strategic thing beyond Asia, take Afghanistan, for example, take Syria, take Iran, then we have serious differences. Because the recent visit of President Trump to Saudi Arabia, where he got $110 billion worth of contract, he put entire weight behind Saudi Arabia. Now, Saudi Arabia is basically Sunni alliance. Sunni. Now, Sunni alliance, but then you confront or put in conflict with Iran, with Syria. At a time when you are fighting ISIS in Syria, you must be having all the countries on your side to fight it. Now there, Iran, Russia, China, they are on one side fighting. Now here we have different, Afghanistan also, our interests are in conflict to some extent with American interests. Though right now they are sending more troops there, but we find they want to talk to Taliban, saying good Taliban, bad Taliban, you know. They also want to not to exclude India, but at least to give prominence to China, which again is not what we want. After all, Afghanistan, we have been long historical relations. This is our border, and we have been playing a role, and also for Central Asian route. I mean, we need. So we have differences, but on the whole, there's a lot more convergence than differences.
A lot more convergence. Also, Mr. Gokhale, let me just quickly come over to you. Now, Mr. Kumar has spoken about China here in some great length. And the US is relying on China when it comes to dealing with the North Korea problem. But how will this in turn impact India with the US's positions?
Well, I think, as I said, India has evolved a policy over the years where it deals with China on its own terms and not going by what the United States wants it to do. As far as North Korea is concerned, India has not really come a step forward and said that we want to be part of any negotiations there or put pressure on North Korea. That has been left to those six-party talks that have more or less not succeeded, I would say, in reining in North Korea at all. And China also, I think, it's run its course. It has tried to persuade North Korea, but North Korea seems to be taking its own time to listen to China. And I think Trump administration's problem has been that President Trump spoke tough terms and tough remarks against China as he took office or even before he took office. But he has reversed some of his positions vis-a-vis China and allowed China to sort of rise in the eyes of the smaller neighbors around China itself in East Asia and Asia Pacific. Now that is where the American administration will have to sort of reclaim that position in Asia Pacific, because the impression that I got, I was at the Shangri-La Dialogue in Singapore in the beginning of this month, and the impression I got there from smaller countries, representatives around China and in Asia Pacific, was that they were concerned about the seeming, I won't call it withdrawal, but seeming disinterest, or I would say the possibility of the Americans scaling down their involvement in Asia Pacific. That concern was voiced in that dialogue, that Asian security dialogue that happens every year. Although I must say that the Secretary of Defense, James Mattis, very categorically ruled out any withdrawal, American withdrawal, or any scaling down. But the recurrent theme there was how to deal with an assertive China. And although India wasn't represented officially by anyone, almost every country that mattered, like the Australians, the Japanese, and even the United States, actually mentioned India's India's crucial role in Asia Pacific as well as in South China Sea and in the Asian, I would say, geopolitics. So therefore, India will have to step up a little bit as US seemingly sort of scales down its global leadership role, and China tries to step in there. India has a crucial role to balance or to create that geopolitical balance in the region, at least, if not globally. And that is where we'll have to wait and watch what is the outcome of this meeting between President Trump and Prime Minister Modi, because the world will be watching, the Chinese will be watching, and of course Japan and Australia will also look to the outcome and see where this is headed, the Indo-US relationship. And therefore, I think it's a crucial meeting. It is coming at a time when the tension the world over, various hotspots, be it North Korea in Asia or Syria or the Middle East, and the rivalry between the Gulf nations is actually rising, is creating more tensions. And I think the role of both United States and India will be crucial in tempering these rising tensions, or at least cooling down temperatures everywhere. Remember, after this, Prime Minister Modi goes to Israel, and he has been to all other important Middle East countries, including UAE, Saudi Arabia, Iran, and Qatar. So therefore, India is now emerging as a crucial player in geopolitics, and I think the American administration knows it. It will therefore have a lot of issues to discuss with India, which we'll have to see what outcome there will come as the talks conclude later today.
Okay, Mr. Kumar, Mr. Gokul is saying that, India has a very big role to play in simmering tensions in the Asia-Pacific region. But do you get the sense that Donald Trump's views on dealing with China have not actually crystallized yet? I mean, let's face it, his position does keep on changing when it comes to China. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, I was telling yesterday also that we should not really judge a nation's foreign policy based on one incident. During election, candidate Trump said certain things about China. Currency manipulated. He gets them his Florida resort, and then you have good relations, or seemingly good relations. That North Korea, they have pivotal role to play. But you have seen some tweets in which Donald Trump has expressed his sort of dissatisfaction or rather unhappiness that things have not gone in China. But China is not something where you press the button. Let us face it, North Korea has been thorn American for a long time. So many presidents, start Clinton time, they've been trying to have dialogue. Sometimes they reach a stage having face-to-face meetings, again go back. I have been saying a long time, what is the message? North Koreans are, by all these antics or whatever missile firing is, what are they saying? They're saying, come talk to us.
Okay.
Clear message that North Koreans want Americans to talk to them as they were talking
that
at
they
one
want
time.
them to come to the table, and this is
They
just
did come to
a
talk
demand for attention.
And temperature will come, I think, long run. The second thing is that China and US, China, emerging power. Many media people say, okay, the heir apparent after down the line 10 years, 15 years of the superpower. US is still the predominant, the number one, numero uno as they call it Spanish, but it's somewhat declining. But if you see the global impact, China's footprints are everywhere. You go to Africa, go to Latin America, whether it's OVO, whether it's a BRI, whatever you call it, you have banks, their own bank. Their influence cloud is beginning to spread wings and increasing by the day. In the broader context, there are more areas in which US and China will be competing with each other rather than complementing. So right now you may say, okay, Mr. Trump has changed policy. No, it is only 1 week, 1 month. No, you can't really have policy. It's evolving. And down the line, how they react. For example, Chinese have said, look, no down. South China Sea, we have historic rights. His arbitration court says, no, you don't have historic rights. If they bluntly say, we don't go by international code or international laws, you have conflict. They have these artificial islands from where they measure their territorial water. US doesn't really accept them. There are many areas which are potential conflict between US and China. We must really wait and see how evolve. Each president takes time to evolve policy.
Now, the question is there optimism about the India growth story? At a time when growth in other parts of the world is patchy, India's focus on infrastructure, technology upgradation and skills workforce are seen as positives. Other recent initiatives have strengthened the positive outlook. Now, while President Trump is pushing America first and discouraging local firms from outsourcing, U.S. industry is estimated to have $2.5 trillion overseas that they are unlikely to bring back to the U.S. because of high taxes. Some of this money could come to India, provided the returns are good. U.S. firms are aware that there is a huge market outside the U.S. in countries like India, and the path to the future growth lies there.